back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today is a continuation and conclusion of the Rossi Brawler holster that is going to have a snap closure, and it's going to hang around my neck and my shoulder. So if you go back and you look at the last video, tells about how I'm doing this because it is a large frame pew, so we want to make sure that I can't carry it on my side. So this is to carry it around my neck and my shoulder, like so, and I'll be able to take it out on my tractor, my four-wheeler, in the woods, whatever. So come on in and let's get started. All right, so the first thing I want to do is, in the last video, I did mark and drill all these holes for stitching 1/16 of an inch. And it depends on the thickness of the leather, what I'm doing with it. I've had guys comment about just using a finishing nail and pushing it through to make a smooth hole and you don't lose any material. But if you really look at that up close, and you look at the last video when I did drill those, you don't lose. That little 1/16 of an inch bit doesn't take out enough material that you can even put on the tip of your finger with all those holes. So that's just a personal preference, whatever you want to do. Most of the time, if I'm using, 8 to 10 ounce veg tan leather, I'm using just a punch, stitching punch. But for that, as thick as this is, so I didn't have to kill my fingers, I'm doing the hand stitching. I did the drilling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of the synthetic sinew. I'm going to use black, and I'm doing a saddle stitch. So I'm going to go 4 times my original length of the stitch that I'm going, which is the length of the holster, where my stitching holes are. So I'll go 4 lengths of that, and that should give me plenty. Again, it's one of those things, I'd rather have 3 or 4 inches left over than be short. So I always like to give myself plenty. Then I'll take my needles and I put one on each end of the thread or the sinew. I'm going to go down approximately 8.5, 9 inches, something like that, before I fold it over on each side. Now as I go down toward the end, I can pull that out as I need it. And what this does to start like that is it helps me not have to pull the thread through so far. So I want to do about the same on the other side. So I want to kind of just eyeball that, measure it by eye to get them fairly close, so you don't end up with one shorter than the other at the end. So I'll pull those down. Remember, it's waxed, so I can pull that down and squeeze it between my finger and my thumb. A lot of people like to split the thread to hold it on there. I've found that I don't have to do that, so I'm not going to do that on this particular project. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the top of the holster. I'm going to pull my first needle through the front and the back, and you can see, even with a 1/16 of an inch drilled hole, it couldn't have taken out much material because it went right through there, but it's still stiff. So I'm going to pull this together, and this is pretty stiff leather, but I'm going to need this to hold together here, and I could put some clamps on it or whatever, but as soon as I get the first couple of stitches in here, especially a lock stitch, it'll stay together. So I'm going to put that in the second hole from front to back, and you can see that's still tight to be pulling on with your fingers. So I'll pull that through. Now I'll take my back thread that was put through the first hole and come back through the second hole back to front. Again, I'm taking these tiny curved needle nose, and that's a preference to whatever you want to use. If you want to use anything, I just don't like to get my fingers hurting. So I'll pull that tight, and there's my first stitch. Now, what I want to do is, especially as thick as this is and as big as this pew is, to a lot of wear on that first stitch especially. So what I'm going to do is, see how that wants to pull apart? I could clamp that down, but I'll pull those stitches a little tight, and then I'm going to go back. I'm just going to pull that through the first. See how it automatically wants to pull apart? I could pull that as soon as I get this needle through. I'm going through the first hole again, and that's what's going to be my lock stitch. So I'm coming through that first hole again, up at the top. I'm going to grab this thread at the bottom on each side, and I'm going to pull on that. Again, and tighten those. And that's going to pull all those threads through. Now I'm going to take the one that was in the back, which was in the second hole, and I'm going to go back through the first hole from back to front. So what that's going to do is give me a double stitch in that first hole, and that's going to be my lock stitch. And again, this is super stiff, so I'll get that through. As soon as I get this locked in, and pull it through, now I can pull on both sides, both of those pieces of thread, one on each side, and that will lock that in nice and tight because of that waxed thread. So now you can see it's not wanting to pull apart. So I've got that locked in. Now what I'll do is I'll start my regular saddle stitching, which means I'm going to put that needle in that second hole again. That's already got a stitch in it. So that will also be a locking stitch. Back to front, much easier, this first one. Then we'll pull it through. We can snug it down, and if we pull up on it, that's going to help align those two holes. Once we get a couple of these threads in here, get a couple of these holes and get it moving, then the holes are going to line up no problem. Plus, you're only dealing with 2 thicknesses of thread and not 4. So we'll pull that through. And tighten that good and tight. Now we've got our double lock stitch here on the top 2 holes. We can go ahead and do the regular saddle stitch. We'll go to the next hole, pull that through. We're going to go back to front, front to back, and you'll notice how much easier that was to align those holes just because we've got those top 2 holes now locked in good and tight. And as I pull that through, I'm just going to keep snugging that down on each time that I make a stitch. And what that's going to do is lock that in as I go. And I'm using those pliers, those little needle nose pliers again, to pull that needle through instead of wearing my fingers out, because after a while that would get pretty rough on my fingers. So went from back to front. Go front to back. And again, because of the size of this pew going in here is the reason I'm using such heavy, thick leather. I want this thing to last. So I can go from front to back, back to front. Doesn't matter at this point, as long as I go front to back, back to front. Notice I'm pulling on that. As I do that, I'm locking that in. I'm holding this together. And look how much easier it is now to line up those holes. As I'm snugging those up as we go down, it's going to get more and more easy to line up those holes and get that needle through both thicknesses of that leather. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up all the way down. When I get to the end on how I'm going to tie this off and end it, I'll bring you back and I'll show you. Alright, so I'm down to the last 2 holes in the end here, and I already had a hole punched back here for this D-ring, and that's for my strap. So I went ahead and put that in before I got this too tight down here to actually put that in. So it's just another piece of leather that I riveted on and made my D-ring. You'll see what I'm using that for in a second. So on the last hole, there's several ways to do this. You could lock it in just like we did the top. This is not going to get near as much use or be roughened up as this end, putting the pew in and out. So what I'm going to do is put that first needle in, and I'm taking it out in that last hole between the pieces of leather. So I'm not going through both thicknesses. I'll pull that through. I'll do the same thing on the other side, and I'll go between the thicknesses of leather and pull that needle through just the one side. Then I can take my needles off of each end, and I can go ahead and tie that. And when I tie it, look how it pulls it together real tight. Now, what's going to be nice about that is I tie it in a knot that pulls it nice and tight, keeps it from coming loose, and then I can cut that off take a lighter if I can keep from the fan blowing I can heat that up and then push that down in there with a scribe or whatever. I used a pair of needle nose. So that's got that nice and tight finished off. Again, I put my D-ring in here for my strap. Now let's go ahead and I'll show you what I had on the other end, and that's where this folds over. I've got another hole here for another D-ring for the other end of my strap. So I can go ahead, put that on like so. I've got a 5/16 rivet. Put my D-ring on. And with the thickness of this leather, I probably could have used a little bit longer rivet. Let's see how this one does. So there's my D-ring for the top. There's my D-ring for the bottom. Top, bottom. This will close and still have the D-ring for the strap sticking out. So now I can go ahead and I can wet form this if I want to. Probably will, but I got to put my snap in there, and I think I'll do that after I put my strap on here. So I've got the same type of leather. This is a little softer, a little more pliable than what this thick leather, the holster itself, is made out of. So this would be a little more comfortable hanging around my shoulder and my neck. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and put it through this D-ring at the bottom. And let's go ahead and mark that and punch our hole in it for our rivet. I can go ahead and take my setter. Might be able to use a 3/16 on this. It's not going to be near as thick. Put that on my setter. And there's my strap riveted to that D-ring on that end. Now, what I want to do is I'm going to readjust the camera here and zoom out so you can see how I'm going to. I was thinking about putting a buckle on this so it was adjustable, but I'm the only one that's going to be wearing this. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that strap through that D-ring and see where this is going to be comfortable to wear. And I probably should go ahead and put the brawler in there so that it has the weight. And that'll give me a better idea of where that's going to lie. And this is the heavy end, so it's going to want to pull that way. So I got to keep in mind if I'm riding a four-wheeler or on the tractor or whatever, or even just walking through the woods, how the placement of that up and down, where's that going to be comfortable? And I think right there is about perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this with a stylus so I know where to cut that and then where I'm going to put my rivet in there. Again, I was thinking about making that with a buckle on it so it's adjustable, but there's really no need unless that's just your preference, but that doesn't, for me, for what I'm using it for, I don't need to go to that expense or that time. So now I can go ahead and put this strap through the D-ring on this side. Let me turn you around here so you can see what I'm doing. And I could go ahead and punch my rivet hole. And I want to make sure that I can go in through both thicknesses. I'll take my 3/16 rivet, put that through the back, put it on my setter, get a cap, and we can go ahead and attach that. Now we've got the strap attached. All I have to do is put my arm through it, put it over my head, and I've got it where I can carry it around now. So the next thing is I'm going to put a snap on here to keep this closed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark it while I have the brawler in the holster, which only makes sense to me. So I want to get that down in there as far as I can. Put this over. Mark where my snap's going to go on the flap. then I can go ahead and put my hole in there for my snap. That way I can tell where my hole's going to go on this side. So I can go ahead and fold that over and then take a stylus and mark the holster here. Now I can take the brawler out. And again, this is very thick leather. You can either wet form this or you just let it break in. It will break in. So let me see if I can just do it with a piece of leather behind it and just push down. And get it on a harder surface that way. Oh yeah, much better. So just taking a stylus and cleaning that hole just a little bit for my snap. And I'm going to go ahead, since these are all silver, I'm going to go ahead and use a silver snap. So we'll take the male and the female end here. I can get a hold of one. And this will be the next. I want to put my female snap or the finished snap here. So I'm going to put my anvil in there underneath the male snap. Once I get it pushed up through that hole, I can put that flat on my flat anvil, and I'm going to go ahead and push that down with a punch that's a little bit larger than that. And all I'm doing is pushing that leather down over that so that I can get my snap in there okay. Again, we're going to use a larger piece of metal and not that anvil. And let's try that again. See if we can't get that all the way in there. That's not. Make sure I didn't get one that I'd already cut off for something else. And it might have been easier to do this and get the snap in, but the problem with that is, yeah, it would have been easier to get the snap in, but would it have been in the exact position that I would have wanted it in. That would have been the main thing. So let's go ahead and seat that. So there's the male snap. And let's go ahead and do the female snap, or the finish snap here. Put it on my anvil. And let's see if we can get that to seat. And it looks like it might have taken hold here. Again, this leather is so thick. There's the finish side. There's the snap side. Let's see if snapped good. So there's what it looks like. Let's go ahead and put the brawler in there, see what we get. See what it looks like. And again, oh, it snaps nice. Again, I think I'm going to wet form this. But there is what it looks like with the snap. I'll back out and show it to you. So here's what it looks like after I've got it finished, ready to use, other than possibly wet forming. But this softer strap leather, which this is, I'd say it's probably 8 ounce, but it's softer. Sure does make it nicer on your neck rather than a stiff, hard leather. So there's what we ended up with. Got a nice snap. It's going to secure the brawler. Pops right open. Again, if I decide I wanted to and wet form this, it would make this fit so much nicer. But again, it will break in. So I'm not sure whether I'll do that or not, but very convenient, easy on and off. The D-rings make it nice. You could hang it up, easy to put on, easy to carry. So there it is. There's the brawler, probably a cross draw hanging harness holster with a snap closure. So it makes it very handy. It's not in my way. If I'm on the four-wheeler or the tractor, it's not hitting my arms or anything. If I'm sitting down, it's not hanging on my legs. So it's perfect as far as the positioning of it. So very convenient. So I appreciate you coming along, watching. Come back next week. Check out the next new project we get started. And as always, please like, share, and subscribe. And I'll see you next time.